Philip said to Jesus, "Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied." Jesus said to Philip, "Have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still do not know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?" I said that Thomas should, rather than being called Doubting Thomas, should be called Honest Thomas. And I think Philip in this passage that I just read should be called Scarcity Philip. Philip's the one who believes that there's not enough to go around, that he hasn't got enough of what he needs in order to live a life of faith. Philip is, there's an interesting parallel back in Luke's Gospel, in the story that is most commonly known as the story of the prodigal son. But it really should be the story of the two sons, because both sons in this story in Luke's Gospel are really critically important. You remember the younger son goes away from home and squanders everything that his father has given him as his inheritance. And then finally, when he's absolutely and utterly destitute, he turns around and realizes that he'd be better off going home, even if it's just to be a servant. So he returns to his father with a little speech ready to say, I want to come home and I'm willing to serve. The father, as you know the story, runs down the road, greets this lost son of his who has returned, welcomes him with a warm embrace, and celebrates his return with a grand festive party. And when the older son hears that this party is going on to celebrate the return of his younger brother, who he sees as a scoundrel, the older brother refuses to come in and join the party. And the father goes out and tries to coax the older son to come to celebrate his return. But when the father invites the older son to come and celebrate this great occasion, the older son answers, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends." See, his feeling is that he's been cheated by life. He feels that there's a scarcity in his life. There's not enough to go around. There's not enough for him to be truly satisfied. Something he needs, something he feels he needs, is lacking. And that's really what Philip says. Philip says to Jesus, "Give us this that I am asking for, this vision of God." And he says, "And then we will be satisfied." So at the moment, I'm dissatisfied. I'm not content with my life as it is. I feel like something needs to be added on. I need something more. Something is desperately lacking. And goodness knows it's easy to feel that sense of lack in these days of COVID physical distancing, and in these days when we are no longer able to engage in so many of the activities that we have enjoyed and shared in and loved and valued. So much, it seems, has been taken from so many. Some in the most desperate sense have lost their lives, have lost loved ones. A great deal has been taken away. And it's hard at times not to feel that there is a scarcity at the heart of life, and that there isn't enough to go around, and that if only we had something more, if only we had just a little bit more, then we'd be okay, and we'd feel secure, and we'd feel safe. It's like a universal human predicament. Just a little bit more, If only I had a little bit more faith, or a little bit more love in my life, a little bit more human relationship, a little bit more money, a little bit more security, a little bit more health, just a little bit more, then I'd feel okay. But the older son is never going to be satisfied. And Philip is never going to be satisfied as long as he's looking outside of himself for something that he feels he lacks. You have to listen to the father's response to the older son. And the older son says, "You never gave me anything." And the father replies, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours." And then Jesus, responding to Philip, saying, "Give me more." Jesus says to Philip, "Have I been with you all this time, and you still do not know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?" Everything that Philip needed was right in front of him, right there in the person of Jesus. But Philip, he couldn't see it. He couldn't acknowledge it. He wasn't able to embrace fully what he had, just like the older son. The father has been loving the older son, caring for the older son, providing for the older son, but all the older son can see is lack and scarcity. And yet all this time, everything the father had was with the son. And Philip, all this time, he's had the presence of Jesus with him. And that's the thing. That's the thing that his heart actually longs for. It's the thing that all of our hearts long for. We think what we're longing for is more security, more provision, more safety, better health, more human relationships, more contact, more connection, more conversation, more something, more anything. But what the gospel wants us to understand is that everything we need is right here with us, within us, right now. We don't need to go anywhere else. We don't need to add anything to who we are as human beings created in the image and likeness of God. Now I know sometimes it doesn't feel like there's enough. Sometimes it feels like we have a desperate lack. Sometimes it feels like there's an emptiness that is at the core of our being, that is crying out to be filled. Sometimes there's a fear that there won't be enough to go around. But the truth that Jesus came to embody is that as long as we can acknowledge and affirm in ourselves the reality and the presence of God's Spirit dwelling within us, then there is ultimately nothing more that we need. And we can go out to meet life from that place of abundance. You remember last Sunday, a couple of days ago, I read, "Whoever comes to me will have life, and will have it abundantly." What Jesus promises is that we have life within us, and it's life that's abundant. It's not stuff that's abundant. It's not relationships that are abundant. It's not activity that's abundant. It's not material well-being that is abundant. It's life that is abundant. Life never stops. Life never goes away. Life never dries up. It never shrivels up. It never disappears. Jesus came in part to demonstrate this reality of life and of the prevailing power and force and goodness and truth and beauty that is our true life. So the question really is not how can I get more? How can I get more of anything? The question is, how can I open to that which truly is? How can I open deep in myself to that presence that is at the heart of my being? How can I find that warm, strong, steady place of life that is my true nature? What do I have to do? What are the practices that enable me to find that place of satisfaction, contentment? And I think one of the first things is something we need to stop doing. And it's just to stop looking in all those other places for satisfaction and contentment. Stop believing for 1 minute that more of anything has anything significant to add to our lives. To realize that adding more relationships, adding more activity, more busyness, adding more material wealth, adding more food, adding more of anything doesn't actually substantially add more to who we are as human beings. It may be pleasant. It may be nice. Sure, it's nice to have human relationships. It's lovely. Human relationships can be wonderful. They also have their downside. Having more material security can be wonderful. It certainly has its downside. Adding to anything externally always comes with a negative, potential negative side effect. But the more that Jesus came to bring, the more that Jesus came to reveal in us, is a more with no downside, no negative side effect, because it's not dependent on anything perishable. Jesus asked in Matthew's Gospel, is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that more than dimension. And we don't have to look very far because it's there, dwelling within us. And when we stop looking in the wrong places, then something opens within us and we begin to discover that there is no scarcity, that the older son was wrong, that Philip was wrong. The force of life was walking right alongside Philip and he couldn't recognize it, he couldn't see it. The challenge is not to get something we lack, but to open our eyes to the reality of what is. It's all about seeing. It's all about consciousness. It's all about awareness. The awareness of what is. The awareness of truth. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And the truth is that we have enough. Whatever our external circumstances, however depleted our external circumstances may be, we have enough life. We have enough life to live a good, true, full, and beautiful existence in this being, just as we are. Of course, if we can, we will improve our circumstances. Of course, if we can, we will improve our health. Of course, if we can, we will open to new relationships and new experiences. But they're not fundamentally essential to who we are as human beings. Who we are as human beings resides in that inner place of contentment, security, and strength that no circumstance can provide and no person can bring into being. It comes from the Spirit, that Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ dwelling within us, that enables us to find that place of contentment where we can rest and trust in the loving presence at the heart of our being. Jesus, we thank you that you provide for us all that we need. We thank you that you give us daily bread, sustaining and nurturing us. Help us to see clearly that there is nothing more we need to add to who we are. Help us to see clearly the poverty of those many places we look for satisfaction. Help us to rest in the fullness of your provision and your Spirit in our lives through Christ our Lord. Amen.